The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everyone. This is Dennis Caye with Belize Islands Real Estate coming to you live today. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon or morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. It is 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on the dot. And what we'll do is just allow people another minute or two to log on. I find sometimes with the GoToWebinar program or platform, I should say, that sometimes it takes people a little bit to download the app if they're viewing from their phone or their iPad. So just out of courtesy for them, we're going to give everyone just a minute or two to get settled in. And for those of you who are online already, we'd like to thank you for being here early so you don't miss out on any of the good information that we'll be covering today. So we appreciate you taking your time. And as always, I promise this will be well worth your while. So just to get a couple of technical things out of the way, if you can hear me okay, if the audio is working fine, and you can see a screen. In fact, you're not seeing my screen because I haven't shared it yet. Let's do that. Let's see. Sharing screen, Microsoft PowerPoint. Excellent. So you should see my screen with my cover slide there. So if you can hear me, please type in yes, either in the questions box or in the chat box, to make sure I'm being heard fine. And if there is any issues, thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. And if there are any issues as we go through the presentation today with either the slides not progressing or the audio, just go ahead and, thanks, Steve, I appreciate the confirmation. Just go ahead and let me know that so I can make adjustments and try to fix whatever's not working properly. Very good. All right. Well, again, people are logging on here. I see more and more showing up. We're going to have a nice full house today. So we had a record number of registries sign up to attend. Not all of them can attend in person, of course, but others will, of course, get the recording after this. I will be sending out the recording, if not later today, then early tomorrow morning. So if you want to view anything that you missed or share it with family and friends, you're welcome to do so. But what I'd like to do before we get started officially is just to launch a simple poll. And I use this information to tailor my presentation to who's online, who's attending, and why. So I'm going to launch a quick poll with 3 options. And simply ask the question, how did you hear about this webinar? So if you're already a client and you already own property on the island or in Belize, go ahead and click the first option. If you regularly receive my Belize newsletter and updates, go ahead and click the second option. Or if you saw my advertising or my social media posts, such as Facebook, Instagram, things like that, go ahead and click the third. And again, I appreciate you helping me out with this because I use this from week to week to adjust the content and to adjust the main thrust or focus of my webinars. And sometimes I host them for different reasons, for different audiences. So I appreciate you taking just a few minutes and helping me out. All right, so I give another 10 seconds or so before the voting starts to slow down, and I'll go ahead and close the poll and actually share it so you get an idea of who's on today. So it looks like 33% of you already own property, 67% of you receive my Belize newsletter that goes out weekly and monthly, so I appreciate that, and 0% of you are coming through Facebook, Facebook posts and things like that. Good. Well, that's good to know. That lets me know how I can tailor this information. So we'll close this out and let's get on with the show. So first of all, I am sorry for all of you who are in the middle of this bomb cyclone that's happening in the U.S. right now. My family lives in Michigan, where my wife and I were born and raised, and they are getting hit right now with record temperatures, just extremely low, a lot of below freezing temps there, and of course New York and Maine. And my brother lives in Myrtle Beach. He even had snow this morning, so a lot of fun going on in the States. But I guess maybe that's the reason why I'm getting record number of attendees on this webinar, because today in Belize too, we were affected by this cold front. We had a record low of 74 today, so it's it's quite chilly, and well, people are still wearing their hats and gloves, especially the locals. They're not used to such low temps. In fact, actually got down into the 60s last night, and you can imagine these poor locals freezing who are used to the 80s and 90-degree temperatures. So keep that in mind as you consider your options in Belize. And in this particular webinar, I'm going to cover these 6 different areas. So I'm going to break up the hour into these 6 different sort of sections. First of all, I've been getting a lot of questions lately on financing options. People need financing. They're wondering the best way to go about getting it. So I'm going to cover that in detail. I'm also going to walk you through exactly how to make an offer on a property and exactly what the purchase agreements look like. Because I find that many of you are thinking that a purchase in Belize is going to be similar to a purchase in the US and Canada. Now, while it has similarities, there's a lot of things that are different in Belize and a lot of things that are really, really simple. So I'm going to walk you through how those things take place. Also, closings and your due diligence. I'm going to show you exactly how a closing takes place, what the buyer is responsible for, what the seller is responsible for. And then, because last week's webinar was such an incredible success, many of you commented how much you enjoyed looking at various beachfront and off-beach options around the island to sort of give you a good overall picture of what's happening with real estate property values, what's going up, what's going down, what's the good buy now, what will be a good buy in the future. So again, I'm going to take that and expand upon it in this webinar. And I'm also going to show you some comparisons depending on why you're buying. If you're buying for personal use and enjoyment or strictly for the financial return, I'm going to show you how various condos compare with other types of investments and see what the return is in each area. And then finally, we're going to cover some live Q&A. So I'm going to take your questions live. And also I have some questions that you submitted before this webinar that I'm also going to try to answer if we have time. So just a quick 60-second overview of Steph and myself. This is our island life. Again, we were born and raised in Bay City, Michigan, lived there full-time until 2003 when we set off on our worldwide adventures. We were looking for something more exciting to do with our lives rather than the same old, same old. And we actually found Belize to be quite nice. We lived on the mainland of Belize for 2.5 years, traveled it extensively everywhere from Corozal to Punta Gorda in the south, the Caye district, and lived for a time on Caye, Ambergris, Caye, and really have an extensive experience with the country of Belize in and of itself. And we absolutely fell in love with the tropical weather, the blue skies, the turquoise waters, and just the overall island lifestyle that we always wanted to live. So it was really a neat experience that we'll never regret. And I had a lot of opportunities to expand personally in my career. For example, I shot several episodes of TV shows for HGTV, one of which was House Hunters International. That was really fun, showing Sienna from Calgary several properties on Ambergris Caye, and also a new show that they filmed called Live Here, Buy This. That ran for 2 or 3 seasons, and I shot 3 episodes for them for this show, showing properties on the island and also on the mainland, even around Belmopan, the jungles of Caye, and that was just a tremendous experience for me personally to be involved in that. And also career-wise, I had a lot of good publicity come from that, a lot of name recognition, brand recognition, and I really appreciate some of those things that I was able to do. But one of the most unique things I had the opportunity to do was to work with the radio real estate guys, and they do a lot of work with Robert Kiyosaki. So I was able to attend the Summit at Sea Investor Cruise with Robert Kiyosaki, spent a week with him, and really learned a lot. And one thing that he mentioned on that cruise changed my view of Belize and real estate in general, and it was this quote. He said, "Money is not the goal. Money has no value. The value comes from the dreams money helps achieve." And this really sunk in with me because we always think about investing for the return to get more money, but then to do what? Or investing in something to get what sort of return for our lifestyle? How does it make us feel? So I took this quote and I adjusted the way I thought about Belize real estate, and I came up with this. Owning real estate in Belize is not the goal. Real estate has no value. The value comes from the dreams real estate helps achieve. So again, real estate is just land, dirt, rocks, wood, windows, doors. The goal is not for us to own something like that. It is, what does owning that provide us in our life that becomes enriching? Either it's the personal experience, the memories, the lifestyle we're able to enjoy, what we can share with our friends and family, or if we're investing just for the financial returns, what does that money that we make from investing in Belize allow us to do in our lives? Again, for personal expansion, for sharing memories with loved ones and having new experiences and things like that. So this really helped me to view real estate in Belize from a totally different perspective. And for those of you who've been following me for some time, you realize that I view it through this lens. So I'm going to talk about two different areas today: investing for personal returns and investing for financial returns. Now, to meet both goals, you need to look at owning real estate in areas that will give you a return on your dreams. And for many of you, that's going to be the island of Ambergris Caye. Belize is a small country. It only has 350,000 people. And yet there are different areas of the country that seem to be attractive for different reasons. For example, you have Corozal, which borders Mexico, that seems to be attractive to expats, retirees who are looking for a place to live on a tight budget. They're looking to make their dollar stretch. Placencia is sort of attractive to those who are looking for a second home or retirement home. The Caye, again, some of these little areas you might see advertised on the internet, or maybe you've heard about some of these projects that are being launched on the mainland. But overall, by and large, most people are attracted to Ambergris Caye for several reasons. First of all, it gives them the island lifestyle that they're looking for. It's very much a Caribbean island. So with that, you have boating, sailing, snorkeling, diving, fishing. Plus, you just have the palm tree and beach experience. But because of that, you have a lot of people vacationing on Ambergris Caye. So it gets a good number of tourists. And with a good number of tourists come excellent restaurants, things to do, excellent tour guides. You get all those sort of features and amenities that you get by owning property in a tourist destination. And yet you can see where there is investment potential as well because of what's happening. So as an example, here's a slide that shows the island of Ambergris Caye. It's 25 miles long by 4 miles wide at the widest. And here are some major developments that have recently been announced or that are in process of being built or in process of being completed and opened. So for example, the government of Belize is very bullish on there being a new international airport built on the north side of Ambergris Caye. To learn more about that, see one of my past webinars. Blacador Caye, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's island off there to the west coast of Ambergris Caye, that is a $250 million project. Again, set to start construction this year. It's going to bring a tremendous amount of revenue into the country and bring a lot of exposure to this Ambergris Bay Area, which we'll focus on a little bit later. You have Caye Rosario, which is an incredibly designed boutique hotel that is right now submitted to the Lands Department for their approval to start to build. So we're waiting to see when that will be issued or what impact that will have on the secret beach in Ambergris Bay Area. But then you also have Venecia del Caribe, which was recently branded as the Wyndham Grand. That's going to be a tremendous boom to this north side area and bring with it its own clientele and its own built-in buyers, so to speak, because those who want to vacation at the Wyndham, those types of people are absolutely our target market as far as investors go. They want to buy property, they want to buy beachfront, they want to buy vacation homes, retirement homes. So that's going to be really interesting to watch how that plays out. It's supposed to open up next year in 2018. And then what's already built and completed and opened is the Hilton Curio Collection at Mahogany Bay Village. So with that being built on the south side of Ambergris Caye, about 2 miles south of the airport, that has brought with it a lot of increased business, occupancy rates, and of course, incredible restaurants, boutique, retail shops. Just a really nice boom for that south side of the island. Now, anytime this much economic activity is pointed at a single market, there is certainly going to be a lot of opportunity. So that's why I'm happy to be able to present to you some very specific information on how to take advantage of it today. So we had this question come in from Rick W., and that's what the first portion of this webinar is based on. He said, how can I get financing in Belize? Well, here are some answers. You can look at U.S. and Canadian banks. I imagine if you're attending today, you are living in North America. So we're going to talk about that briefly. You can look at getting financing through the local Belizean banks, or developer financing, or individual seller financing. Now, what is the difference between all these and what are the pros and cons? What works, what doesn't? Well, first of all, your US and Canadian banks typically will not give you a property loan for properties outside of the United States or Canada. It has nothing to do with Belize itself. It's just that a US bank doesn't want to be stuck holding a property in a foreign country if you default. So I have not found any US or Canadian banks yet that will fund your property purchase in Belize. Now, what you can do, and what several of my clients have done, is they have taken out a home equity loan. So, for instance, if they only owe $100,000 on their house and their house is worth $300,000, and they're able to pull out some equity to buy a property for cash in Belize, I have seen that work successfully. That works good because the interest rates that you would pay on a home equity loan are a lot less than you would pay in Belize. Or some have even just taken a home equity loan out for the down payment on a property in Belize. So they might have a dual mortgage, so to speak. They're paying on a home equity loan that has a very low, reasonable interest rate that you can get in the U.S. and Canada, and then they might have a larger mortgage on a property in Belize that through a seller, through a developer, or maybe even through one of the Belizean banks. Also, what you might consider doing, and I've had many clients do this, is just simply put the down payment on your credit card. Now, I've had hundreds of clients do this when they purchase properties in the Grand Belizean Estate subdivisions, Palmyra Woods, Ambergris Woods, Grand Mayan. Those lots go anywhere from typically $2,500 to $25,000 to $30,000 per lot. And so the down payment on those is usually $2,500 to $3,500. So a lot of times they'll just put that on their credit card. And a lot of times credit cards will offer you 0% interest for 12 months or 24 months, allowing you to pay that off without any penalties. So that's what some of my clients do. But anyways, this is just sort of like the first look at financing, the home equity loan, the credit cards, but then we move on to the other options. So you can also finance properties in Belize using your local Belize banks. Banks such as Belize Bank, Atlantic International, Caye Bank. Now, the terms that they loan money at are a lot different than what you're used to in North America. And this is what limits the growth on Ambergris Caye to a reasonable, slow pace. You know, I just mentioned all those things that are driving the market. You would think with everything going on in and around Ambergris Caye that we would just see an incredible boom in sales. Well, here is what is keeping that from happening. Belize banks will loan on Belize properties, but at these terms: 40 to 50% down payment, interest rates of 10.5% to 12%, and typically the amortizations or the length of the loan is much, much less than you get in the US and Canada. So they might go 5 years, 10 years, 12 years on a property. And this really prohibits or prevents a lot of people who are interested in Belize real estate from buying, because either right now they just don't have that much liquid cash to put down, or they just can't afford the monthly payment that comes from paying 10.5% to 12% interest. In the 13 years that I've been dealing in real estate in Belize, only 2 of my clients have ever used local Belize banks financing, and you can see why. It's not saying it's not a good option for you, but it really depends on what you're looking to do, and it's best discussed on a one-on-one basis. But there are better options than this, and here they are. Number one is looking at developer financing. So, for example, you want to buy a condo at Belizean Shores or Grand Mayan, not Grand Mayan Estates, but Grand Caribe or Cocoa Beach, or one of the new projects coming online. Most of the time, if the developer has inventory available, he will offer financing himself. Typically, it's around 30 to 40% down. So we get away with a little bit less down payment, but he oftentimes will offer a little bit better interest rates. So maybe 7.5%, 8.5% interest. And what he'll sometimes do is go a 10-year AM with a 3-year balloon. So it's more of a short-term financing rather than a long-term, because ultimately the developers want to get paid, get their money back, and move on to the next project. But they realize that the barrier to entry for many people buying in their projects is financing. So they'll come up with some sort of a solution to offer their interested buyers, get them in the game, get them in their project, and that way they can move on and sell and move on. So developer financing can be a good deal, and I'm going to show you one option of that a little bit later on, a deal that's available right now, a one-bedroom at the Wyndham Grand property. Really, really unique deal, and I think you'll like it. Also, what I find very interesting are the individual seller financing options. So this means just like it says, I have a property, it's a house, it's a condo, it's a piece of vacant land, and me as the seller, I'm willing to offer financing to my buyer. And a lot of sellers would do this, surprisingly. They might want some amount down. For instance, if they have a beachfront property that's selling for, let's say, $180,000, they might want a good $20,000 to $30,000 down. And here's why: they probably want to use a bit of that money to fund some sort of project they have going on, whether it be sending a kid to college or paying for someone's wedding or something like that, or maybe even putting a down payment on another property that they want to invest in. So they'll get some money down so they can pay off the real estate agent and have a little bit of money in their pocket. But then they're more than willing often to become the mortgage holder. So they'll become the bank, and then you as the buyer simply make monthly or quarterly or annual payments to the seller. And I find that in my sales, about 60%, 62%, I'd say, of all of my sales involve some sort of developer or individual seller financing. So it's a great way to go because it's easy. There's no credit reporting. There's no, if you do default, it doesn't leave a black mark on your credit rating. So it's a really good way to go. And I'm going to show you how that works here in a little bit. So let's kind of move on. We've talked about the different ways that you can finance properties in Belize. Now let's move on to making an offer. Let's say you find a property. The seller is willing to finance it. You need financing as the buyer. So how exactly do you go about getting something under contract and closing on it? Well, here's what we do. It is a 6-page purchase agreement that you, the buyer, and the seller will sign off on. Each page will initial, you sign the last page. So this is it. You have 6 pages of paperwork to legally buy a property in Belize. And this is true whether it's a piece of vacant land, a private island. For example, there's a private island that we have for sale right now for $1.6 million. If you chose to put it in an offer using financing, you would use this exact 6-page document. I'll show you why that is as we go through in detail. But you buy homes like this, condos like this, and you do more paperwork buying a TV at Best Buy than you do buying real estate in Belize. So let me walk you through. Here is an exact replica, a sample of a purchase agreement using financing. So you see the agreement for sale here is made this 5th day of January, the day of this live webinar. And you have the buyer's information there. I gave him a name of Jim Smith. He's fictitious, doesn't really live there. And you notice I have in red there a circle, it's and or assigns. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But what that means is Jim Smith is putting the property under contract, but before it closes, he has the opportunity to assign the contract to a different entity. So for example, an LLC, an IBC, maybe he wants to add someone to the party. He can do that at a later date. And this verbiage here gives him the opportunity to do so. And I have Bob Johnson as the seller. So these two have agreed to sell parcel number 9834. So that's a parcel in a subdivision called Seaview Estates on the island of Ambergris, Caye. That's the legal description of the property itself. So now what we have here are the buyers and sellers identified and the legal description of the property. The next thing we go down to is the closing date. I put a closing date here of March 1st. It's January 5th today, so it leaves us about 7 weeks to close. And typically closings here take 6 to 8 weeks, and I'll explain why here as we go through this in a bit. But if you put a property under contract today, I would expect you to be prepared to close in about 7 to 8 weeks. So you should just know that as far as getting your funds together, paperwork together, and being able to actually fund a deal. Now, what the buyer is responsible for is the seller is responsible for is to deliver to you, the buyer, fee simple, clear title. That means the title has no liens or encumbrances. If it does have some sort of bank loan on it, that you're guaranteeing them that by the time the date comes for the closing, that lien will be removed. There's nothing funny about the title. It's all 100% legal, legit, issued. It's yours to transfer. So that's the responsibility of the buyer. Now, you look at the next line item there, the purchase price, that's clearly spelled out in US dollars. So if you're purchasing a property from another American, so if it's a American to American, or what we call expat to expat transfer, the contract will be in United States dollars. If it's a Belizean to an American, it'll be in Belize dollars. So just keep that in mind. So here with this deal, the buyer is putting 20% down on this deal. So he's putting in an initial earnest money deposit of $12,000 or 10% with the contract. So this makes it legal. So buyer and seller both agree to these terms. So when that happens and both sign it, then the buyer will send in 10% earnest money deposit. That's typical. So it doesn't matter what you're buying. If you're buying a $500,000 condo or $1 million island or a $20,000 lot, you're going to send in 10% as an earnest money deposit, and that money is non-refundable. That is your security that guarantees you that the seller is not going to sell it to somebody else. That secures your stake in the property, that earnest money deposit. Now, on a cash deal, what we would have you do is at closing, so that 7 to 8 weeks later date, at closing, you would send in the complete balance, and then you would simply close. So done deal, easy, move forward, titles transfers, and that's it. But on this financing deal, what we normally do is have you send in your 10% earnest money deposit, and then whatever additional amount you're putting down. So in this instance, it's another 10%. So the buyer is putting 20% down total, and he's going to do that by the closing date of March 1st. And then on March 1st, which is considered the closing date, that $24,000 is released to the seller per their instructions. So that money could go to them in its entirety, or if they've worked with a realtor, maybe a portion of that is commission or whatnot. But anyways, that's the 20% down. And now what we turn our attention to next is the monthly payments. So whatever terms you've worked out with the seller, if you're making payments over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is, you have that area of the contract clearly defined. Now, how are both the buyer and the seller protected in this sort of arrangement? Well, number one, this paperwork is registered with the Lands Department in Belize. So what this does is register your interest in the property, clearly stating that you have ownership of this property as the buyer as long as you continue to make payments. Now, the seller is protected as well because in Belize, title does not transfer to the buyer until the seller has received all payments. So what happens if you, as the buyer, decide to stop making payments? Perhaps you have no longer any interest in the property, maybe you've fallen on hard times, maybe a change in circumstances, and you simply stop making payments. Well, here's how the seller is protected. If you miss 1 or 2 payments, this clause here in paragraph 13 states that the seller could notify you in writing that you have 45 days to get current. And you have 45 days to get current on your back payments. And if you don't get current, then the seller has the right to send you by a registered letter a notification that the agreement for sale that you both agreed on is now terminated. That it is no longer valid. It's as if it never happened. And you as the buyer then forfeit your down payment and your monthly payments. So it's sort of like having your car repoed, because if you buy a car, you put a down payment on it, you take it home, you drive it for 2 years, and you stop making payments, well, they're going to take back your car. Well, same thing here. So you're both protected, though, as buyer and seller, because neither one of you can do anything to harm each other. As long as you agree to the terms and you fulfill those responsibilities, it's a win-win for both parties. Now, as an added protection for the seller, we have this clause in there that if the buyer wants to make any improvements, let's say he wants to build a seawall, add some fill, put in a foundation, build a cabin, a house, whatever, that he first has to get the seller's written approval, because here sometimes what we have seen in the past is somebody will buy a piece of property on financing terms, a vacant piece of land, and they'll go ahead and start to build something, run out of money, and now all of a sudden the seller gets back this half finished disaster that he doesn't know what to do with. It's going to cost him money now to either try to finish it or get rid of what's there. So anyways, this little clause we put in there, but it's up to the buyer and the seller to work out, because if you're financially secure as a seller, you can show you have sufficient funds, the buyer might not have any problem allowing you the go ahead, just go ahead and build whatever you like on the property. But again, that's something that you guys need to discuss with yourselves. And then finally, the last page is the signature page. So after you've agreed to everything, you sign it, you have it witnessed, and that's it. So that's all 6 pages of the agreement. Now, do you have any questions on this before I move on? Because I notice a lot of you are looking intently and paying close attention. So do you have any questions so far on how a financing deal is structured? If not, I'll go on to the cash deal. All right, none are coming in, so it looks like we covered that. Now, how does a cash deal work? Well, it works exactly like a financing deal, except, of course, it doesn't have the verbiage regarding the financing terms. So it's strictly a cash deal. And that agreement for sale is, of course, much shorter. It's only 4 pages long, but all the same information that I just showed you: buyer, seller, purchase price, parcel number, closing date, signatures, things like that. Very, very simple agreement. Now, there are other types of agreements that you might come across that are not a straight cash purchase or a straight financing purchase. So where you could find those are, for instance, if you were buying something pre-construction. As an example, if you were buying something now at the Wyndham Grand property, something that is not completed yet, you would find structured payments or staged payments. So you might put 30% down with a contract, another 25% at foundation, another 15% at roof pour. So your payments are tied to actual physical build progress. So you would have a different type of purchase agreement for those types of purchases. Or if you're buying into a real estate syndication, so if you're getting together with a group of investors and you're going in on a project together, that agreement for sale will look a little different. But we don't do these very often. Most of the time it's a straight purchase, as we just discussed. So now we move on to the closings and due diligence. Let's say you find the perfect property, you and the seller agree, you put it under contract. What happens next? Well, the seller is responsible for all real estate commissions and to provide free and clear title. Now, typically, real estate commissions in Belize are 10% of the purchase price. And along with that, you might have a little bit of tax to pay in GST, another few points on top of that. So you might be paying out 11.5% of the purchase price. The buyer is responsible for all closing costs and stamp tax. So right now, stamp tax is 8%, closing costs are around 2%. So the buyer is responsible for about 10% of the purchase price on his end of the deal. So I know in the States and Canada, sometimes those are subject to negotiation. So if you make an offer, you say, I want the seller to, split the closing costs with me and things like that. Well, in Belize, it's not like that. We don't do that because the seller has this responsibility on his end, the buyer has theirs, and both are about the same. So there is no negotiation on any of these things. So moving forward, what we do once we have a signed agreement is we send that paperwork then to a third-party closing company. Now, the one that we use quite a bit is called Belize Caye Investments Limited. They have an office on the island of Ambergris, Caye, Belize. They handle about 90% of all the closings for our office. There are other closing companies that you can choose to use because, again, this is up to you now. as the buyer, you get to choose who you want to work with to handle your closing. However, we highly recommend Alberto Villanueva at Belize Key Investments because he does so many transfers and he's been in business for the past 15 years. So he's well known in the lands department, well respected, and he handles all of our deals from the smallest $30,000 lot all the way up to multi-million-dollar properties. Very, very good office, very good team. Now, what they will do after receiving the purchase agreement is they will send both the buyer and the seller a due diligence form. And that's a simple one-page form that has the information about you and about this deal. What they will require in order to start the closing process are the following: a color copy of your passport picture, preferably a flatbed scan and not a picture taken from a cell phone, a copy of a utility bill showing your name or names and your current address, and a signed and complete buyer's due diligence form, which I'll show you next in the next slide. Now, why those three things? Well, in Belize, you have to have a valid passport in order to purchase property. So if you don't have one now, you can still put a property under contract, but you just might need to extend the closing date out because we can't close until you have a valid, current, legal passport. Now, the copy of the utility bill, that's important because the Belize government needs proof that you are an expat, or not expat, you are a foreign person, a non-Belizean resident. So they want something with your name and address on it in the state, so, or Canada. For instance, a phone bill, electric bill, things like this. And then the next slide shows this buyer's due diligence form. So your address, your phone numbers, email, things like that. And then you notice what I have highlighted there in red, if the purchase is going to be an upfront cash deal, if it's going to be a deal where you're doing terms on or financing, or if it's a deal using monies you have in your IRA. And for that, if you do have money in your IRA and you didn't know about this already, go back and watch last week's live broadcast. I have it uploaded to my YouTube channel because I walk you through in detail how to purchase property in Belize using funds you already have in your self-directed IRA. Very, very cool to do. So, next step in the closing process, the buyers and sellers fill out their due diligence form. They send those required docs into Belize Key Investment. Then Belize Key Investments would do the title search. So they'll send in a request to the Lands Department of Belize, and they'll say, show us the history on this title, and does it have any liens or encumbrances? 99% of the time, the answer is no, it is free and clear, because typically real estate agents only want to deal with properties that are able to be transferred and that are 100% ready to go, legal, free and clear of any liens or encumbrances. But of course, the title search is ran just to make sure. Once that is confirmed, then step number 3 takes place. Alberto's team will draft the title transfer forms. These are one-page forms, legal-sized documents that need to be signed in person. So he will FedEx those forms to the seller. The seller will sign and date them and have them notarized. Then they will be FedExed from the seller to the buyer. And then the buyer will sign them in person and then have them notarized and then send them back to Belize. And usually all this takes place via FedEx. So it's a little longer process than you would think because FedEx in the States and Canada typically is overnight or at the most 2 days. It can take 4 or 5 days for packages to get from Belize to the States and vice versa. So this might take 2 weeks to accomplish all that. So that's why we say it's about a 6 to week close on average. Now, most closings are done virtually. What does that mean? Well, most of our buyers and sellers do not reside on Ambergris Caye. They might reside in other parts of Belize, other countries. And so everything is taken care of via email, fax, and FedEx. Rarely do we have two people sit down across from each other and sign documents. Just doesn't happen. Most of my personal sales, 95% of all of my sales actually are done online. Many of my clients have never set foot on the properties. I sell to them. I help them to invest in because I provide enough video, pictures, background information, maps to show them exactly what they're getting. So even from my standpoint, a lot of my clients I have never even met in person. I've only talked to them on the phone, dealt with them over Skype or over email. And again, the people that they're buying the property from, they've never met them. Everything happens virtually. Now, what happens after the closing date? Okay, so all the paperwork is done. The title transfer forms have been FedExed to the buyers and sellers. Everything's signed. Everything is back in Alberto's office. The money's in escrow. On the closing date, the deal is funded. So everybody's paid out. And then the title transfer forms, along with all that documentation, is sent to the lands department in Belize so that the transfer of title can take place. Now, if it's a cash deal, if it's a straightforward deal, you paid cash for the property, all your paperwork is sent into lands, they will begin the process of issuing title to you in your name or in your company name, however you're taking title, and you might receive a physical copy of that title anywhere between 4 and 6 months after the closing date. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. The lands department is very small in Belize, and depending on the amount of work they have, it can take a long time to get actual titles issued. If it's a financing deal, that all that paperwork is sent in, but title transfer doesn't take place yet. Remember, the seller retains ownership of the title until the buyer pays it off in full. So what we do is we take the original title and we have it held in escrow, usually at Alberto's office or some third party where it's kept in a bank safe for safekeeping, again, so nothing happens to it. And then title is actually transferred when the buyers pay off the property in full. So let's go back and talk about one thing that I told you we'd talk about a little bit more is this and or assigns clause or verbiage that we have in all of our agreements. So what this means is Jim Smith finds a property, he goes under contract. But in the purchase agreement, we put this and or assigns clause. Now, what that allows Jim Smith to do is before the closing date, and before Belize Caye Investments drafts the title transfer forms, he can decide whether or not he wants to take title in his personal name, Jim Smith, or if he is married, him and his wife's name. If he has an adult child, he wants it in him and his adult child's name, whatever. But that is called taking title in a personal name, okay? Very straightforward. Or let's say he has a company, such as an LLC, or maybe he wants to form a company to hold title. He can do that very easily in the States. You can form LLCs quite rapidly, usually within 24 to 48 hours. Excuse me. He can use that company to hold title to his property in Belize. You can do this with a condo, home, island, piece of vacant land. He can also form a Belizean Chapter 250 company to hold title, or he can use an IBC, which is an offshore company, like a BVI IBC or a Panamanian offshore company, Anguillan IBC, one of these types of IBCs to hold title. Now, each has their own pros and cons. I've gotten into these before in detail. I can explain more at a later time because I don't want to eat up all of our time in this webinar. But I would recommend for most of you that you form and hold title with an IBC. Provides a lot of tax advantages, ease of transfer, actually increases the value of the property. And I hold many of my own properties in IBCs. I hold some in a Belize Chapter 250, a couple of my personal name, depending on the structure of the deal. But I've used all three of these, but the fourth option is what I highly recommend. So those are some of the more technical details of how we go about making an offer, closing, how to take title. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the next portion of the webinar, and that is using real estate as an investment option to receive some sort of return. Again, because as we discussed at the beginning, real estate has no real value other than the dreams it helps you to accomplish, whether that be personal use and enjoyment or a financial return. And there's three ways that you can look at doing that. Number one is through owning vacant land. Number two, owning a condo. And number three, investing in a single family home. So what you need to do, and I can't do this for you, I can help you walk through this a little bit through our conversations and through our correspondence back and forth. But what I need you to do is to answer the question honestly. What is the main reason why I am looking at real estate in Belize? Is it for my own personal use and enjoyment, so that I can make memories with my family, my friends? I can have these incredible experiences that owning property in Belize would allow me to enjoy. And then answer that question based on a percentage basis. In other words, this is the 100% the reason I'm buying. Or this, let me grab a quick drink of water. Or are you split in your reasons for buying? Maybe you do want all those things, but you do want some sort of financial investment as well. So you say to yourself, you know what, 75% of the reason why I'm buying is for the lifestyle, because I just love Belize and I want to be on Ambergris Caye. I can see myself just living that dream. But maybe 25% of me says, you know what, I do want to make some money on the deal. And really, who doesn't? But decide what percentage you would give in importance to each of the areas, because that affects the location you buy in, your budget for your property, and you really need to look at what your short-term and long-term goals are. In other words, right now, if you came to me and said, Dennis, I retire in 15 years, I want a property now that I can use part-time, I want it to return a good amount of money, and when I retire, I want to move into that property full time. Well, to accomplish all those goals, to find one property to do all that probably isn't realistic. You might want to start off with a property that meets your short-term goals at one of those areas, and then decide, what am I going to do long term? And it's the same thing making a financial investment. There are a good percentage of my clients who are investing in property in Belize using their IRAs, knowing full and well that they would never actually use the property that they're buying personally. They're doing it strictly for the financial investment. So for them, it doesn't matter where the property is located, what it looks like, or any of those details that are normally associated with personal use and enjoyment, because it's not about that for them. For them, it's all about the return. So for them, we look at different types of properties in different locations. And for a good number of my clients, they end up buying 2 or more properties to accomplish various aspects of their dreams or to meet their goals. So one property they might buy meets their personal use and enjoyment criteria, while another property meets their financial investment criteria. If this all makes sense. So here's a question that came about after I explained that to a certain client. Terry said this: you seem to push vacant land a lot. Don't you have any properties that cash flow? Well, actually, Terry, I do push vacant land a lot, and there's a good reason for that. But I want to, first of all, walk you through what it means to buy a cash flow property in the States and how it's going to be different than what you might think cash flow properties are in the US and Canada. Because a good number of my clients are savvy real estate investors. They own homes, apartment buildings in the States, in Canada, and they think that they can do something similar in Belize and make a similar or greater profit. Actually doesn't work that way, and here's why. Take a look at these next few slides. I'm going to go through a quick study of how cash flow works. All right. First of all, let's take a look at your typical North American rental property. Let's say you're a real estate investor and you find a single family home for $100,000 that you think will rent well. Well, you're probably going to finance that property rather than spending $100,000 cash on it. So you're going to go to your US and Canadian bank and you're going to put probably 20% down, because it's an investment property. So you're going to put down 20,000 US dollars. The interest rate that you get is probably going to be about 4.2%. And on a 30-year mortgage. So your monthly payment on that property is a small amount, $391. Now, let's say the home rents for $700 per month. After you subtract insurance, some maintenance, your property taxes, and maybe you're more of a hands-off investor, so you have a property manager taking a little bit of a cut. After you subtract about $200 a month, you are cash flowing this property at $109 a month profit times 12, so about $1,308 a year. So that $1,308 a year is strictly your net profit income off of a $20,000 investment. And what you hope to do is this: you hope to get consistent renters in an area that continues to grow. You make you make preparations for any major repairs, like a hot water heater goes, it needs a new roof, something happens and you need to replace the carpet, things like that. So you plan for those types of things. But the goal is eventually the property increases in value enough so that you can refinance the property, get your $20,000 investment back that you put down as a down payment, and now you are free and clear on that property, and you can just continue to reap the net profit per year, and eventually the renters pay off the house, and then you have a cash cow for retirement. So that is the way most of my real estate investors in the United States and Canada view cash flow properties, whether this is on single family homes or apartment buildings. Now, try to apply this same sort of scenario to Belize, and we quickly realize it's not the same. This is a real example. Take a look at the next slide. We have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo for sale at a beautiful resort called Royal Palms. The condo is for sale for $250,000. So let's say that you're a real estate investor, you're buying this for investment, and you decide that you want to finance it like you would in the States. Well, here's what you would do. You go to Belize Bank, they would say, okay, give me 40% down, excuse me, which is $100,000. Your interest rate is 10.5% on a 15-year mortgage, so your monthly payment is $1,658. The average rental per month in this resort is $1,200 US per month. So let's say you find a long-term renter, 6-month, 12-month renter. He's paying you $1,200 per month. After you back out insurance, maintenance, taxes, a property manager, your HOA fees of $350 a month, your cash flow is a negative $808 US. So you aren't making a profit, obviously, and you're coming out of pocket $808 US. So is this a good financial investment? In my opinion, no, it's not. It's a good lifestyle investment. Royal Palms is a great place to live. It's a great place to spend time, a few months a year. I was a year-round occupant of one of these condos for over 3 years and absolutely loved it. So from a personal use and enjoyment standpoint, it's worth every penny of $250,000. But don't buy this thinking that it's going to cash flow and become a good source of net revenue as a financial investment. It's just not going to happen. Now let's take another example. We have for sale a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo at the beautiful resort called Belizean Shores. It's on the north part of the island of Ambergris, Caye. This is also for sale for $250,000. Has a beautiful beachfront Caribbean sea view. Just awesome services and amenities. So the net return on the rental income from this property is $4,000 US per year. Now remember, this is an upfront cash purchase. No financing is available on this. So $250,000 out of pocket, you net $4,000 a year, plus you get 28 days of personal use. Now let's say your average nightly rate there is $150. So you take $150 times 28. Let's say the value of your personal use is $4,200. So for your $250,000 investment, you get $8,200 back in return of actual monetary value. Well, that's a 3% return on a $275 investment that includes your closing cost. So again, would you consider that a good financial investment? Well, no, I wouldn't. I would consider it an incredible lifestyle investment, place to spend time with family and friends and make memories and snorkel, dive, and fish and all those cool things that you want to do living the island lifestyle. But again, view this strictly as being that type of purchase and not a financial investment. As a direct comparison, excuse me, let's say you took that same $250,000 that you have in cash, and instead of buying that condo, you buy and sell a piece of property that costs roughly around 250,000, or you buy somebody else's mortgage or a note that they already have in place. And for more information on this, let me know after, and I'll show you how you can do this. You buy a mortgage in Belize, somebody who is making payments to a seller who wants to cash out. The loan is making 8 to 10% in interest. So you could technically make a 8 to 10% return on that money, making $20,000 to $25,000 per year in interest alone. So let's say, okay, well, I'm not getting any personal usage though. Where's my lifestyle component? Where's my personal use and enjoyment? It's not there with a mortgage or a note. Well, here it is. It is there because you can take just a small portion of that. For example, for 3,000 US dollars, you can probably rent through Airbnb a beachfront home right on the water for 28 days and simply subtract $3,000 from your $25,000 of interest that you made. And now you are still coming out way ahead, and you have both. You have a secure financial investment, and you have an incredible personal use and enjoyment component to the investment, because this allows you then the money to, and the freedom to go to Belize to experience living at different places on Ambergris Caye or the mainland. Or let's say one year, you know what, you just don't want to go to Belize. You don't feel obligated that you have to come back to the same place, especially if you're younger. Like Steph and I, we use a lot of our investments coming in from Belize, a lot of our financial returns to fund our travels all over the world. It's our 25th wedding anniversary next month. We're married 25 beautiful years, and we are going on a 3-week Eastern European trip. We're going to Slovenia, Macedonia, and Austria, and we are funding that with monies that are coming in through our investments in Belize. And so you might want to do the same things. You might want to use that money in Belize, or to fund other things, or to fund things such as your kids' college fund, or all different sorts of things. But again, the reason I'm kind of going through this mental exercise with all of you today is because I know that you might have in your mind that you want a beautiful property to use personally, but you also want it to return at a high rate. What I'm telling you, those might be different options, and we can help you decide which one is more important at this time, which one makes more sense to invest in today, and then which one makes more sense to invest in at a later date, whether that be 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. So here are some real examples of how you could do that. You could invest in a condo with a portion of your money, and you could also invest in a lower priced entry level off beach property, beach view property. As an example, we have properties right now very close to Secret Beach, right on the main road, that are costing about $75,000 US plus your closing costs. So if you bought and sold a property like this for even about the same price, and you sold it, offering seller financing, then your first year alone, you'd be making $7,500 in interest. You could use that $7,500 again to fund several months of life in Belize, or you could use it to fund something else. So, all right, let me just take a quick question here. Europe, what is the webinar? Linda and Rod, I see your questions. I'll get to them in a little bit, I promise. I just want to move on to this next slide and continue on with these few examples. Here's another example of buying land in the path of progress. I'll get into this a little bit later. In fact, let me just check the time. Yep, we're going a little bit long. Let me just skip over a few of these because I talked about it before in other areas. Let's get on to IRAs, okay, IRAs, talked about it before. Okay, bear with me. Bear with me. All right, so here's where I want to pick up. So all of this was said and all of this was explained to sort of steer you into this next concept that I really like helping my clients to discover is that when you work with me and you buy a property either for personal use and enjoyment or investment, what I try to help you to see is the value of looking for the bargain property in what will be an expensive neighborhood. What I don't try to do is just steer you toward the cheapest property or the most expensive. First of all, I don't like the more expensive properties. I think you can get in at a more reasonable cost and still enjoy everything the island has to offer. But that being said, what I don't want you to do is just to buy a cheap property because cheap is not always good. If it's too cheap, it's cheap for a reason. There's something kind of fishy with it, so to speak. And also, expensive is not always good and not always a good investment. So what I want to do here is just take you through an exercise of comparing different types of waterfront properties because the majority of you have asked me what sort of beachfront opportunities I have. So I'm going to go through several with them you now, and these are actual listings that I just pulled off the internet in the past 8 days. And what we're going to look at are beachfront options on the east side and the west side of Ambergris Caye, and to see what their value is or what their cost is by looking at how much they are on the market for per beach foot. And what I mean by that is property on the island is sold by giving a value to each running foot of beach it has. So, for instance, this property is a property available through Sunrise Realty, not one of my listings. It is at Paradise Coves, parcel 10574. It is 100 feet wide, so 100 feet of beachfront by 285 feet deep. It's 3 miles north of San Pedro town, and it's on the market for 990,000 US dollars. All right, so just under $1 million. This would be perfect for a large single family home or a very small condo project. The value per beach foot is just under 10 grand. $9,900. So excellent value if a person wants to build their own beachfront estate in an established areas where all of their neighbors are already known. Here is another property at Tres Cocos subdivision. This is just north of San Pedro town. It's just across the bridge. This property is just under $1 million, 999,000 US, and it has a little bit more beachfront, 127 feet, but it's not as deep. It's 138 foot deep. So this property has a value of $7,874 per running foot of beachfront. Again, if you're looking for your own private estate, something to build on, this property for $1 million is for you. And again, not my listing. This listing is to Seaside, but if you want me to represent you in the purchase, I'll be happy to be your buyer's representative. Here is another property, a little bit better deal, in my opinion. It's at Mexico Rocks. Mexico Rocks is located 6.5 miles north of San Pedro town. This is a nice property. It's 1.4 acres, but look at the size of the beachfront. It's 100 feet wide by 600 feet deep. It's $500,000. Again, whoever buys this is probably going to buy it for one large single family home, and it has a value of $5,000 US per beachfront. Here is another property on the east side at the Basil Jones subdivision. This is 14 miles north of San Pedro. This has 145 feet of beachfront, and it has it's priced at $320,000, having a beachfront price of $2,206. Now, those are all on the east side. What I normally try to do is, with my clients, steer them toward the beauty and the undeveloped areas of the west side of Ambergris Caye, because here is where we start to see the real value will come in. The good bargains, the properties that are cheap now, but what will become an expensive neighborhood in the future. Here's an example of that. Caribbean Cove's beachfront property. This is about 2.5 miles southwest of San Pedro town. This is a 1.29 acre property. It has 80 feet of beachfront, and it's for sale for $200,000 US. So this has a value of $2,487 for beach foot. Again, you see how the cost per beach foot has gone down. So now, instead of spending $500 to $1 million for your property to build your home on, now you're down to a more reasonable $200,000. Very, very big difference. Here's another example, a property at Laguna Estates, beachfront lot number 4. This has 120 feet of beachfront. Again, it's about 2 miles southwest of San Pedro town, about a 5-minute boat ride. This property is 120 feet wide by 100 feet deep. So again, probably only big enough for one single family home. It's priced at $225,000, but look at the beachfront price. Pretty darn good. $1,875. So that beachfront price has dropped. But again, whoever buys this is buying it knowing that he's just going to put a single family home on it. So other areas that I would recommend that you look on the west side of Ambergris Caye are areas that are maybe just outside of the path of progress, but have a reason to have an incredible boom in value in the next few years. So things like roads, other infrastructure might be coming in some of these areas, or a lot of attention is being given to an area. For example, something's going on that causes a lot of people to physically see the property or to know about it or to go there. For example, Leonardo DiCaprio's Island of Blackador Caye is bringing a lot of attention to Ambergris Bay. So is Caye Rosario. So is the beach club owned by the Hilton Curio Collection. So a lot of people now are experiencing the properties in and along the Ambergris Bay beachfront. And so what we're doing now is we're looking for good deals on properties in some of those areas. And so now what I want to do is tell you about a few that I have found. First of all, option number 1 is a beachfront property just about 1 mile north of Secret Beach. Here's an aerial view of it. It's lot 434. It's in the Ambergris Bay subdivision. It's 4 miles northwest of San Pedro town, and it has 191 feet of beachfront. So more beachfront than any of the properties we just looked at that were priced between $200,000 and $1 million. And because of the shape of this, it's got this triangular shape, but it's got this incredible spread of beachfront, so you can really lay out a very cool designed house. I'll give you some options of that in a little bit, but here's some more information on it. It was recently surveyed, so you can see the survey here. It's parcel number 8445. You see it has free and clear title. It's ready to be transferred. The sellers will do some financing on it, but then look at that. It's in a prime location on this corner because that little cut that you see there in that slide that goes down, so it goes down to the west, that is actually an opening that leads into a protected harbor area that is designated to be a future marina. So this is a really cool little property. Here is a Google Earth overlay showing the government issued rim map overlaid on top of Google Earth. So you can see the triangular shaped lot there, parcel number 7-42-8445. And when we looked at pricing this property, again, considering that right now it's a bargain and what will become an expensive neighborhood, we looked at what properties have sold around it recently. And what I mean by recently is in the last 17 days, these 3 properties went under contract. Parcel 8560 sold for $75,000. Parcel 8460 sold for $95,000, and parcel 8460 sold for $88,000. The 8560 is a financing deal, 8466 is a financing deal, 8460 was an IRA cash deal. But then you can see on this slide how much of these properties, how much they went for, and their beachfront property value equivalent. So anywhere from $714 per beach foot all the way up to $1,461. So when we look at those numbers, trying to decide what a good bargain price would be on this triangular shaped lot, we came up with different scenarios. So if we priced it at 714, 1,461, 1,353, we came up with an average of 136,000 up to 279. Well, the sellers have decided to put a value on this of $179,750. Now, this is a webinar only price, so I'm allowed to sell this to any attendee to my webinars. It is available only through me at this price, and what that works out to be is a beachfront price of some of the lowest on the entire island of $941. So a very, very good value on this beachfront lot. So if you're interested, let me know, and we'll see if we can strike up a deal for you. Option 2 is a beachfront lot number 490. Now, why do I think this is a good deal? Well, it's got a value on it of $185,000, but it is very, very close to Secret Beach. And Secret Beach, for those of you in the know, is already an established hotspot on the island of Ambergris, Caye, Belize. So it's got Pirates Beach Bar. It's got a beautiful little bed and breakfast. It's got the Secret Beach restaurant, bar and grill. It's got single-family homes in the area. A lot of things are happening in this area. It draws a tremendous amount of tourists and locals there daily. And this lot is located just one block to the north. It's parcel number 8583, lot number 490. Here it is on the government-issued plot map, so you can see it there. It is direct beach front. Here is a view standing on the lot, looking west out over Caye Rosario. You see that there in the distance, and beyond that is Blacador Caye. And here is a picture of the lot itself. You see it's got beautiful palm trees. The lot doesn't need much prep to get it ready to build on. And some very dear clients of mine purchased the property next to it, lot 491, Bruce and Karen Pfeiffer, and here's a picture of them standing in the water right in front of these two lots. So just a beautiful part of the island, crystal clear water, no trash, no seagrass, beautiful sunsets. It's just a really, really cool area. So at a purchase price of $185, you notice that the beachfront price is a little higher, especially compared to the triangular shaped lot of $975. This one is up there around $3,700 per beach foot. So why so expensive, you say? Easy. It has road access. It's close to Secret Beach. It's a single family lot. Somebody buying this lot will put a single family home on it. They're not looking to do a whole lot else with it. So for $185,000, it's a good price to pay to have a true beachfront lot with road access that you can put your single family home on. And here's a few shots of Secret Beach Bar and Grill. So you're one block from here. You have a lot of action in the area going on, and you have a nice little community of a booming area that you can rely on. So here is another option. I have never offered this before. This is the first time ever. I just learned 5 days ago that there were 2 beachfront lots available at Laguna Estates overlooking the small island of Caye Espanto. Like I said, I just learned about this, and yesterday I sold one of the lots at Laguna Estates to a very good client of mine. And so there is one lot left at Laguna Estates, and here is an aerial view of it looking from east to west. So what you see out there in that small island to the upper left, that is Caye Espanto. This is only about 2 miles southwest of San Pedro town. Now this lot I consider an incredible deal, and here's why. It has fee simple title, full ownership, it's ready to transfer. It would make a perfect residential property. The price for all of my webinar attendees is $120,000 US. Financing is available through the seller. So he'll do 30% down, 10% interest, a 10-year AM with a 3-year balloon. So very easy financing terms, and a great way for anybody looking for a good investment. First of all, this will make a good financial investment because you could buy this, sit on it, flip it for a much higher price in the future. Again, just look at what that property is selling for at Secret Beach for $185. I would say this property here at Laguna Estates is even more desirable, especially for those looking for a single family home to be built, because it's just got this cool vibe, being so close to Caye Espanto. And here's why. Here's an aerial view of Caye Espanto. Just look at those crystal clear waters. And for more pics and video, after this webinar, go to the website privateisland.com and you'll see what I mean. It's absolutely gorgeous. Here are some of the overwater villas for rent at Caye Espanto. These were built by one of the top builders on Ambergris Caye named Graniel, Armando Graniel. He is also the builder I recommend that all of my clients contact and at least get quotes from, because he is very good, honest, hardworking, delivers a good quality product. You can see by these pictures here what he built for Caye Espanto, a really cool island vibey feel. So you could have something like this built on that lot or on any lot that I've shown you today, or you could have something a little bit more modern, more cutting edge with a lot of glass and tile and granite. But again, whatever you want built, Graniel can do it. And I just thought I'd throw a couple of these options. And just as an example, if you wanted to build a nice single family home and rent it out per night, you probably won't get these rates, but Caye Espanto gets anywhere between $1,800 and $2,300 a night. And you can see this is their February 2018 calendar, how booked up they are. They don't have much availability left, but they get these rates all day long, all year long, because it's just such a cool part of the island and because of the experience that they offer. So again, my 2 cents, Laguna Estates, this one remaining beachfront lot, I think is a tremendous deal. Now, what about off-beach properties that might be a little more affordable? You know, not everyone can afford $120,000 to $200,000 for a beachfront property. Well, just for comparison's sake, let's look at a couple options that are on the market right now that I just pulled off the internet today. So this option is being offered by Sunrise Realty. It is a second row lot, meaning it's one row back from the beachfront. It's 50 foot wide by 110 foot deep. And you notice the price, $175,000. Now I'm telling you this for a reason. This is one of the highest priced second row lots of this size anywhere in the island. And it is unheard of, or it was unheard of even 12 months ago. 12 months ago, this would probably sell for $75,000, $90,000 max. But because of all that's happening on the island, second row, third row, fourth row lots are almost all sold out. They're being snapped up like crazy, and the prices on what the remaining inventory is going up considerably. Here is another example of second row lots. This one is in the Mexico Rocks area. This is a good 8 miles north of San Pedro town. These two lots are going for $75,000 a piece. Again, 12 months ago, you could probably pick these up for $40,000, $45,000. Prices have drastically increased on all off-beach properties, especially on the east side. So again, what I direct my clients to is to look for good deals on the west side, such as this parcel number 9008. This is a very large lot, 1.3 acres. Might not sound large by U.S. standards or Canadian standards when you're used to talking about acreage, but on an island, it's a big lot. Let me tell you, it's a big lot. Most of them are a fifth of this size. This lot is a true second row lot located just south of Secret Beach, right where the main east-west connection road ends, dead ends, right at the Grand Belize Estates dock, and it is priced to sell at $65,000 US dollars. It's a cash deal only, and what's really cool is it's so large that you could apply for subdivision on it and divide it into 10 smaller lots and sell them off individually for $30,000, $35,000, $40,000, depending on what road they end up being. So $65,000 for this second row lot. Here is a aerial view of exactly where it's located. So you see Secret Beach there at the top of your screen, just about 3 blocks? I would say that is 1, 2, 3 blocks. 3 blocks south parcel number 9008. One of the absolute best deals I've ever seen on a second row lot of this size. So if you're interested and you have the cash, again, this qualifies for an IRA purchase. So if any of you are attending right now and you have $65,000 cash in your IRA, you can buy this with one stroke. It qualifies, and I think it's an incredible investment. Also, if you're looking for a property that's just a little bit farther from the beach, you can get this lot, lot number 14, in the Ambergris Woods subdivision. This lot is priced at $45,000. There's no HOA fees on it, no build restrictions, and it's only a two-block walk to the beaches. And again, all beaches in Belize are public, people, so don't feel you have to own beachfront property to use the beaches. You can own property anywhere, and you can access any beach. They're all open to your own personal use and enjoyment. Here is an aerial view of exactly where Ambergris Woods is located. So there's a red arrow pointing to it. You see the east side, that dark blue water there on the lower part of the screen, that's the Caribbean Sea. Then you see the reef line, and inside the reef line is very, very shallow, leading up to San Pedro town. You can see it there. And then the other side of the island, that's all Ambergris Bay. So that's where the focus is. Caye Rosario, Blacador Caye, the properties that I've been highlighting, the good deals, those are on the west side, the sunset side of the island. Here is a plot map showing the exact location of Ambergris Woods. You see right now you have a what shows as a beach access road. That road is not put in yet. So this subdivision does not have beach access, but it will at some point in the future. So you'll be able to walk right from lot 14, which is in that little corner there in the upper left-hand corner. Just above the A, you'll be able to walk from lot 14 right to the beach. Take about a minute and a half to get there. For those of you looking for a good deal on an improved property, this deal at the Wyndham Grand, I think, is one of the best. It's a one-bedroom, one-bath condo. The list price on it is $389,000 US, and I've been authorized to offer it as a webinar special for $260,000 US dollars. It is a very good deal, especially being connected to the Wyndham Grand brand name. Here is a aerial view showing construction actually taking place on Benicio del Caribe, the Wyndham Grand. You see the beachfront buildings there. Behind it, what you don't see are the other second, third, fourth buildings. And then the upper left-hand side of your screen, you see an aerial rendering of what it will look like when it's completed. Just an incredible concept. Its construction is being pushed ahead full steam, and they really want to get this open in 2018. And for this type of a price, $260,000 to have a one bedroom. This is what I consider a bargain property in what is an expensive neighborhood, because all of the two-bedroom condos at the Wyndham Grand on the beachfront are starting at $1.2 million and up. The back condos, so in the buildings that don't have a ocean view, two-bedroom, two-bath back there, are starting at $550,000. So I think for $260,000, this one-bedroom, one-bath is an absolute steal. Here's some more details on the Wyndham Grand Belize. The nightly rate that they project to rent it for is $250. Your HOA fees are $225 a month. Your insurance, which covers everything, earthquake, plane crashes, hurricanes, flooding, only $1,100 a year. Property taxes, $800 a year. Now here you're looking at the returns. Again, going back to my investor hat, I would tend to recommend this for the lifestyle investment, and I would recommend it for the financial investment. Here's why. Cocoa Beach, the sister property next door, averages about a 5% net return on other properties. With the Wyndham name, they're projecting an 8 to 10% net return. So I think I can safely recommend this property both as a personal use and enjoyment property and as a financial investment. Finally, if you want to see that property at the Wyndham Grand and you want to see sort of what the Sandy Point Resort properties are all about, Cocoa Beach, Belizean Shores, we have several condos offered at those resorts and other places like Exton Ha and Costa Blue. That all falls under the Sandy Point Resorts family of properties. There is an excellent real estate agent called Chris Seals, a very dear friend of mine. We do a lot of work together. He is doing a real estate discovery tour from March 9th through the 12th. It's a 4-day, 3-night tour, and he's personally going to show my clients all of the various properties that are currently being offered for sale, especially in the condo market. So in the resorts that are opened already, they're functioning, they're live, they're turnkey, they're complete, but also resorts that are currently being upgraded, on the drawing board, or that are being built and are structured with those construction financing payments. So for those of you who are interested in that, he's doing this at a very reasonable rate. It's a 4-day, 3-night tour. It's almost all inclusive, includes a dinner, your lunches, your breakfast, 3 nights at Cocoa Beach or one of the Sandy Point Resorts rooms, condos, or hotel rooms. Very good deal. I would encourage you to go. Like I said, just go get the full island tour. He's going to show you not only those condos, but also all beachfront properties on island that you might be interested in, off beach properties, those on the west side, those around Secret Beach. So I think it's a good deal. And if you're interested in that, just shoot me an email. I'll give you Chris's email address, and you can make direct contact with him. So let's see. I've been going now for about hour and 23 minutes. Let me just take a few of your questions here. First of all, Linda says, what if the buyer is from Europe? It's the same applies to you, Linda, as it would to a buyer from the United States or Canada. So you have to have a legal passport, and everything else is the same. The closing is the same. Everything's the same. So the two designations when buying property in Belize is, are you a Belizean? Do you have a Belizean passport, or are you a foreigner? So the laws and rules apply to you just like they would to a buyer in the U.S. Here's the next question from Rod. Rod has a question. What is the name or date of your webinar that explains investing with an IRA? Okay, Rod, I did that last week on Thursday night. I believe it was the 28th. Just pull up my calendar here real quick. So, yep. So December 28th, 2017, I did upload that to my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and just type in Dennis K. Belize, look at my videos, that was the last video I uploaded. And I think I actually named it IRA and IBC Investing in Belize. So you can check that out. But I go through that in detail, how to buy properties with your IRA. And oops, Sarah's cutting out. Oh, Rod, you said I was cutting out, but it was about a half hour ago, and I missed it. So hopefully I came back on before you missed too much. All right. Steve says, good job, Dennis. He had to go, but thank you anyway. All right, excellent. Well, listen, guys, I have been going a good almost an hour and a half now. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. And I find that if I go on too much longer, my voice starts to go. So if you have any questions that you want to ask me personally, please go ahead and email them to me. I will use them as a basis for my next week's webinar, but I will get back with you to the answers, of course, before them. And if you're interested in any of these properties, usually from these webinars, at least one or two of them sell. I have a good number of attendees on today, and I'm not saying that to offer you any sales pressure because I don't believe in that. You'll buy when you're darn good and ready, not a moment sooner. But I do find that with some of these properties, because they are such a good deal, there is a sense of urgency. And the properties that I told you about that sold last week, within the past 17 days, those are actual sales. The one I wrote up yesterday is an actual sale. And so what I do try to do in these webinars is to highlight my best deals. I search for them every week, I highlight them, and a lot of times they do sell. So if you have any interest at all in anything I presented, please let me know. Or if they don't quite meet your needs, but you want to ask me about other properties, go ahead and email me as well. All right, guys, I think I'm going to go. So appreciate all you attending today. Thanks so much, and I hope to hear from you soon. Cheers.